What is school for? Forgive me for being slow, but I've spent 14 years of my life going to school, and I still don't really know. I graduated near the top of my class, and what did I get? A piece of paper to sit at home with my mum. Today, I'm going to show all of you how an effective high school education really is for students. I'm going to debunk some myths, show that school doesn't focus on the student, and explain that school isn't really a place for learning. I've had some bad experiences throughout high school and have seen the perspective of how badly it can really be for students like myself and others around the world. First myth is going to school is the only way to be successful. This is perhaps the biggest lie that has ever been told in society today. In the US, nearly 1.2 million students drop out every year. I mean, if you look at Heston, I have counted around 12 children that have already dropped out, and it's not even the end of the first semester. There are many options for people who have dropped out. Like, do you guys use Snapchat or YouTube? Did you know they were both created by dropouts? Have you ever shopped at IKEA or your family? Okay, don't get me wrong, he wasn't a dropout. I mean, how could he? He didn't even go to school in the first place. I mean, even some of the most famous people we look up to in school never had formal or secondary education. I mean, Abe Lincoln, George Washington, two of America's greatest presidents never had formal or secondary education between them. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm just picking and choosing. There are millions that drop out and aren't successful at all. And you're right. I may not be a dropout, but if it wasn't for baseball, Coach Cole and Coach Glum, I would have just been walking alongside them, those unsuccessful dropouts who don't amount to anything. My next point is that curriculums aren't built for student needs. Students get overwhelmed by having 2 projects, 1 essay, reading chapters 4 through 6, and having a speech due by the end of the week. You may think that is pointless jargon, but that was my week this week. And that is just ridiculous. I mean, if suicide is the 3rd highest way of death from ages 10 to 24, then why just add these additional stresses on top of that? See, the education system was originally created to train people to work in factories, which is still shown architecturally in buildings like Crop. So Crop puts students in nice and straight rows, nice and neat. We're told sit still, raise our hand if we want to speak, we're given a short break to eat, and for 8 hours a day we are told what to think. See, we use a grading system in which determines product quality, which is like grade A of meat. And I don't know about you guys, but I am not a product. According to a study in Taiwan, students benefit more from shorter school days, less homework, and more sleep. And if you don't believe me, please visit the work cited, which I also did in MLA format because I know that's all you accept. Our third point is the way we test the students' abilities is disgraceful. Since when does a person's worth in school be defined by one of the first 6 letters of the alphabet? How do we allow multiple choice tests to determine how successful someone is in their life? In fact, these standardized tests are too crude to be used and should be abandoned, but don't take my word for it. Take Frederick J. Kelly, the man who invented standardized testing, who said, and I quote, "These tests are too crude to be used and should be abandoned." See, with education, we digest all this information and facts all to be thrown up on a test and forgotten about for the rest of our lives until we need it again. That is not education, that is bulimia. And the more bulimic you are, the better you will do on these tests. I'm not saying these tests are completely worthless. I'm saying that there is a difference between people who are smart and people who score better. See, school teaches you how to memorize these dots. True education should teach you how to connect them. A school education in which I believe does not revolve around a student's scores or the guidelines in which is enforced on a student. It is a place where people are encouraged to be the best possible version of themselves that they were created to be. A quote from Tom Herrick says, 21st century kids are being taught by 20th century adults using a 19th century curriculum. So I ask you guys one last time, what is school for?